What we're going to do now is use the table saw to cut all the pieces. Now all these sheets, they're 60 inches by 60 inches. So they're a perfect square and they are rather large and hard to hold. So what we do is we need to cut out 10-inch strips from this board. Now to maximize what we do, let me turn it this way. The grain is going right now vertical. And this is plywood, so there's grain going all other directions. But ideally, we want your board to have the grain going the long ways with the board. But to maximize this, what we're going to do is make two cuts, two 10-inch cuts here and here. Now I've subtracted 10 twice from 60, that's 40. Our board is 40 inches. So what's left is the correct length for the entire board. So I'll make two cross cuts, and then whatever's left I'll rip with the grain, and that will give me enough wood for two boards. So I can't make a 10-inch cut. What I have to do is set it to 9 7/8. And the reason I have to do that is because the blade is 1/8 of an inch thick. So if I set it to 10, I'll be removing 10 1/8, and I can't do that. I need it to be an exact 10-inch cut. So the last piece will be 9 7/8, just like the rest of them. So set your table saw to 9 7/8. And please remember, if you need some help holding this because it is a little bit awkward, please ask. The next thing that we need to do is cut the first two pieces that we cut on the table saw a little bit shorter. All of the pieces are 40. That's what we want when we're finished. But the first two were 60. They were the full length. So simply come to the chop saw, set it to 40, and go ahead and chop off the end. Before you actually get started on gluing up the board, there's a couple of things that you're going to need set up so that once it's glued, you can quickly get it into the bag. So I'm just going to pan around with this camera to tell you everything you need. First, the board. Board's really heavy. You can see that it has a few lines cut in it, and the idea is that air will circulate through those lines, so air will be sucked out. But you've got to put it down on top of these foam squares that I have in the corner so that the airbag has no chance of getting punctured from whatever may be in the table. You're also going to need the pump. Pump is located in the back room. We'll pull it out. You have a hose that's hooked into the back and goes all the way around to the front of the bag. And it's squeezed into a little hole in the bag and actually goes up into the board. So if you look down, you can see the hole. It's actually inside the hole staying there. And this, where these cross over, is where the air is sucked out and it spreads out throughout the whole board. You also need the little lock on the back. This comes in two pieces, and this is usually on the board when you grab it. We have our little piece in our locking outside, and that's just sitting along the edge. And of course the mold. Now this mold is contoured this way and is contoured this way, both directions. The idea is that when you suck all the air out, it'll squeeze your board down on top of it. That's why we make it out of multiple layers. So now that we have all this set up, everything's plugged in, we'll be able to get it glued, quickly put it in the bag and seal it before the glue sets. Now let's go glue your board. Here are the things you're going to need for your board. I have 4 pieces here, and one of them, the grain is going sideways, and we want to bury that inside the middle of the board. We want the outsides to be with the grain. So you'll have 1 or 2 of these, and then this, and then whatever's remaining on top so that it's buried in the center. So here's how we're going to do this. Let's go ahead and put that in the middle, just so it's in the order I want. We need to glue these together. You're going to need a bottle of water, spray bottle, and of course all your glue is found in this, and there's a paint roller that will just roll it on. It's a lot easier to apply than a bottle of glue and then trying to spread it around. Take your glue and get a lot on there. If you need more, just get some more, but you're just painting it on, and move it all over the place. Now, I need a little bit more, so grab some more. It's hard to get too much glue with this. This glue is really thick. It's a very thick glue. It's not running at all. That's the reason that we need the water bottle, because I don't want this glue to set up before we get it done. Okay, so there's one done. Now what I do is I take the water bottle and I'm going to spray it with water. And you want it pretty wet. I've even had students run this under the faucet, then you just move the water around. Okay, that's good enough. Take the wet side, put it down on top of what you just glued, line it up fairly close, and then repeat the process. And you're going to do this same process, gluing and then wetting the next one for each piece until you get to the top. Now we're going to put on the actual image that you taped together. This is all glued, but do not get this wet. I don't want to get here and spray this or the backside, because it will warp this like you wouldn't believe, and it'll never go on flat. So go ahead and just leave it dry. We just set it on there. And try not to get glue on the surface. So I got a little bit on my fingers. If you start touching it, you'll get glue spots all over. Make sure everything is flat, nothing is sticking up. Now, if you have two sides to your longboard, this is the top. This is the top that I'm going to see whenever I'm riding around. I put this on, and then I flip it over, and now I put the bottom on. So when we actually glue it up in the bag, the top is down, bottom is up. So now I would put the bottom on, and now we can move it on. Now I don't have a bottom, so we're just going to leave it like that. I still like having the top down so its own weight kind of keeps it flat. So now the reason we have this butcher paper is I pull this out, and I'm going to wrap it up like a burrito. So we hold it like that. I have used newspaper and I've used wider butcher paper, and it all works great. The idea for this is any glue that's squeezing out doesn't get in the bag. So now you just take the whole thing and haul this over to the bag so we can suck it down with a vacuum. Take your longboard, try to keep the paper fairly flat so it just doesn't curl up. And now your job is to try to center it. So I've got about the same space on each end, and it's roughly centered left to right. Okay, right there. Okay, now we close up the bag. We pull out this white tube and put it here, and what you do is you wrap the end around the tube and it snaps shut. There are 3 snaps, one on each end and one in the middle. And it snaps shut around that tube. Just get the snap on, and we'll put that back on. There we go. And the idea is don't have any creases, nothing rolled, no bumps at all. It has to be flat or air will get through. Then you line this up and you use your grip and you squeeze it on there. And sometimes it takes 2 hands to do because it's a tight fit. Squeeze it on all the way to the end. And like I said, it's not that easy to do. And that's it. And that's going to be airtight. Now all I have to do is turn on the vacuum. Now while the vacuum is sucking out the air, this is going to be your last chance to kind of nudge this left or right if it's off just a little bit. You turn it on, and the back of this machine, it says auto cycle or continuous run. We want auto cycle. It'll suck it all down to a certain amount, and then it will stop until it reinflates a little. But it'll still stay down. Auto cycle. You can hear it start running. And now I just take the last moment, because it only takes about 60 seconds for it to suck down, and make sure everything's good. That looks good. Everything seems to be lined up. And you'll see that the air just comes out of this whole thing, and it'll suck the board down to the mold, and it'll give it the bends that the mold has. Once it reaches the right pressure, then the machine will turn itself off and it'll just cycle through. It needs to stay in here for a good hour, if not a little bit more. So class typically is over. We put this in and class ends, and I'll pull it out at another time, and then we'll go from there. So the cycling is done. It's reached the proper pressure. Every so often it'll turn back on and just keep the pressure on until it's dry.